Hi, I'm Chris Bateman. I've worked with Terry Pratchett and Michael Moorcock, and now I'm working with Scene Worlds, which is infinitely cool.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. This is Scene World. I'm AJ. Joerg is there. What's happening,
Hello.
man?
Well, we are recording the intro of the next podcast episode, obviously.
That is true. That's what we are doing. Yeah. So in a minute, we've got Dr. Wuro from... That's not the guy's name. That's the company, right?
Well, he calls himself Dr. Wuro as well as a nickname, and he calls the company Dr. Wuro Industries.
Okay, sure.
Christian Gleinser.
Yes.
And
that's his name.
He is known for a lot of games, especially four-player, multiplayer games.
He's one of the big guys in the scene right now as far as producing new titles and new commercial-ish games.
Yep, exactly. So we are very proud to have him this time.
So that's in a minute. Before that, there's some news that I have, and maybe Joerg. Joerg said last time that he didn't have any news, and then he came out with like 25 minutes worth of news. So he says he doesn't have any news today, but I'm not so sure that I believe him. We'll find out in a minute.
Liar. Okay.
So just announced as of a couple days ago on Amiga on the Lake, there is a new replacement keyboard for the C64 by Kipper 2K. It is called the 64MX.
Really?
Yes.
We definitely should link to that. A new keyboard.
We will. Yes.
With keycaps or without?
Yes, with key. I believe it's with. Maybe the new keyboard will support multiple keycap sets, and it's reported that keycaps with symbols and letters will be available.
Wow.
So, and it also will use USB, so you can use it with your PC and single board computer, also if you feel like it.
Okay, but also with the original C64 board connector. Oh,
yes.
nice.
And they're taking pre-orders right now for at Amiga on the Lake. It's not you can pre-order Amiga replacement keyboards. Kipper 2K has also made some Amiga replacements.
So you can't pre-order the C64 ones yet?
Not yet, no. This was just announced July 31st. They announced this thing. There's a couple of pictures.
So like a week ago or something.
Yeah. There's a couple of pictures. One has some keycaps. They're different colors.
Great.
Yeah. So we'll link to that in this thing. There are also, I guess there are Amiga replacements too. This is the first I'm finding out about this. There's A500 replacement keyboards and A1200 replacement keyboards by Kipper 2K, with a full set of Amiga keycaps to go along with them, which is surprising to me because all I keep hearing is how nobody can make Amiga keycaps for some reason.
Well, I still hope Phase 5 in Austria is finally coming up with theirs after 4 years.
Yeah, but maybe Kipper figured out a way. Maybe these are old, NOS keys. I don't know, but they are there. You can pre-order them. They're like $200 for the A500, and I don't know what the A1200 is.
Wow.
So they exist, and they've existed since like October of 2018.
Wow, nice.
Yeah. So over in the Netherlands, Bart Venneker has been working on a C64 chat cartridge.
Nice.
So he's been, and there's a bunch of YouTube videos released on this. He's doing this largely on his YouTube channel, which we will link to in the podcast description. And it's called C64 Chat. And I guess it's kind of like an IRC looking thing. It's difficult to really get a good idea of what it is because I don't speak Dutch. But if you do, check out his YouTube video and try to figure out what he's doing. So that's two projects that look pretty bitchin'.
Great. Sounds wonderful.
Yeah. The Mega 65 continues to rock. So, do we have anything else aside from those 2 little bits? Or 3 little bits, or however many little bits I had?
Well, my NTSC NAS from Venezuela passed customs after 4 weeks sitting in Cologne. Woo! It was there for 29 days.
Lovely.
Yeah.
They're probably playing it. So by the time this podcast comes out, Joerg should be currently in Gamescom, floating about.
Well, we wanted to release this before Gamescom.
Yeah, but
so we said on the 15th, and I'm at Gamescom on the 19th.
Right. So shortly after this is released, you'll be in Gamescom.
Yeah.
So probably, I mean, assuming people don't listen to this the second it comes out, they'll probably be listening to this whilst you're in Gamescom.
I guess most people from the statistics I see are listening it on the first day, actually.
Okay. Well, then this podcast will be coming out shortly before Joerg goes to Gamescom, and then the next one won't be out until after he's back from Gamescom. So maybe some people, if you guys are in Germany and you might want to go to Gamescom and to the retro area where you'll find Joerg and some of our select other sweeties hanging out in the with our Scene World table.
Yep.
Go do that. Check it out.
Yeah. Gamescom.global is the homepage address.
Yep, and link to that in the podcast description below. So that's that. And then when you come back, I guess we'll be doing a Gamescom retrospective.
Yeah.
So that'll be cool.
2 parts this time, actually.
Yeah. So that'll be nifty.
Yeah.
Eating burritos again?
Burritos?
Whatever that noise was, I was making a joke that sounded like a fart.
Okay.
What is that? Is that like sounds like either a disk drive or like a...
You mean this?
No, it's like a happens every so often.
That's my phone leaning towards the printer.
Oh, okay.
That's my iPhone 7 Plus with the red front and the red back.
Every so often it goes... It sounds either like an Amiga drive trying to search for something or...
1541.
Someone was eating beans.
No.
But anyway, so if that's all we got, then we should probably pop over to Christian Gleinser or Dr. Wuro.
Yeah.
Whichever name we prefer.
Yeah. So, today we are talking to Christian Gleinser, who is actually known for a lot of multiplayer C64 games he released commercially.
Not just multiplayer, but like 4-player multiplayer.
All right, that too. So welcome to the podcast, Chris. Glad to have you here.
Hi there.
So I would say let's start with the roots. How did it actually happen that you got involved in computing and the Commodore 64 and all that stuff?
It happened all the way back in my childhood. So I was born in '84, and I think I got into the C64 at around 5 years old or something like that. So end of the 80s or maybe even 1990 or something like that. And I even remember the first games that I played. So I can really remember how the first day with the Commodore was. And the first game was Park Patrol. The second game was Wizard of War. And the third game was Super Cycle.
Oh, yes. Super Cycle. That was one of mine, too.
So basically, the story is quite funny, actually, how we got to the Commodore. So my uncle, he was writing his diploma or doctor thesis, something like that. And he was writing that on a typewriter. And then he had a water problem in his flat back then as a student. And half of the work got wet, and then he decided to buy a computer. And that was a Commodore. He bought it used, I think, from some friend or so. And when he was done with his thesis, he didn't need the Commodore anymore. And since he didn't have own kids, he gave it to us, which is my brother and I. And so we ended up with the Commodore. So that was a lucky thing to get this, because I don't know how it would have turned out if I would have started with a different system, maybe.
Spectrum.
Yeah, right.
Spectrum with beautiful colors.
Yeah.
Who knows?
That's interesting that you mentioned the first day. Jörg, do you remember your first day actually having the machine?
Yes. There's actually a picture on Facebook when I was on my grandfather's Commodore 64 in '87 as a 5 years old, and I got mine when I was 8, my own, in 1990. So the age I started with the computer was the same as for Christian, but the story was different. Just my grandfather had a Commodore 64, and I got my own. So that wasn't.
Yeah.
I was 8. This is how it started for me.
I was 8 too, and I remember. The whole day I remember because it was. It was Christmas and we got it, and I opened it in the wrong order. So I was supposed to open the computer first, and then the game. But I actually opened the Frogger cartridge first, and I remember being like, "The hell is this for?" And I thought that someone had messed up because I thought they meant to get me like a handheld game and didn't realize it was a cartridge. So I had to do the like, "Oh, gee, thanks," like pretend to like it, even though I thought that my grandparents, being not computer literate, had just picked up something in the store and didn't realize what it was.
The good old days.
Yeah.
Was it the same cartridge you actually?
It is. It was.
10 years
it's
ago?
the one that you have.
God.
Yes.
Wow.
and I'm glad I did that too, because if I had kept it, with what we've gone through and with me, moving and all this stuff, I probably wouldn't have still had it. So know, even if I don't have it, to know that the original Frogger cartridge that I had in 1986 exists somewhere is awesome.
And it's still working in exact the same shape as it was 10 years ago.
Well, I rarely played the game. I wasn't big on. It wasn't my favorite game.
Which is a nice lead to a game from Chris called Frog. Right?
I know. You see, like that was my plan from the start. You like how I did that?
Yeah. So basically, you didn't get the cartridge; you just made that up.
No, actually, I did. The cartridge.
Yeah, no, I did. I gave it to him.
Oh, nice! This is a not so common American NTSC release, because to this date, I only knew the European release of Frogger.
I've actually got another one over there too.
Nice.
That I stumbled across accidentally someplace.
Now you say you make it then in batches and tell them a spare, like Chris Hülsbeck's Gia Sisters disc, the Commodore 64. Like somebody selling like 300 of them.
Yeah, I know. I love it.
I'm pretty sure Chris remembered all those batches where he signed them some years ago.
Yeah, all 800 discs he signed.
So anyway, so this is how you got your C64. How did that start, that you made your own games and all that stuff and became Dr. Wuro?
Well, first of all, I have to say I'm not Dr. Wuro, so I'm just working for him. Yeah, so he keeps me in his dark laboratory, and he's telling me what to program because he doesn't want to do it by himself. So that's the true story. But okay. So about the games, first of all, actually the story continues because the C64 that we got as a kid, it broke down 2 or 3 years later, and I got my own C64 in 1994, which was one of the last ones that they sold in the mail order company called Quelle. So it's a German mail order.
Actually, not true. My grandfather got some from Quelle 96, but not by mail order. But they sold it here in Frankfurt as a game machine in the stores.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. I didn't think that they sold it that late.
They did, because I was speaking to David Pleasance once, and he confirmed that after Commodore USA was bankrupt in '94, Commodore UK and Commodore Germany still kept making new Commodore 64 for 2 years later when Ascom took over.
Okay, yeah, I heard about that, but I didn't know if it was true because I heard they had plans for Amiga and Commodore 64, but I thought they only produced Amigas, so I didn't know that they also produced Commodore 64s.
I don't think they necessarily it was old stock. They weren't producing the parts anymore, but it was like they had this stuff laying around, so we'll sell them.
Exactly. So for 100 German marks in '96, you would get a game machine called Commodore 64. From the Quelle store in Frankfurt. So basically 2 years later still. Yeah. And it's funny because these later C64s, they were really bad quality. So just to give you an example, my grandfather, he bought one for me and one for himself because he only had the Pratt bin model. And he liked the Commodore 64C or Commodore 64-2 more because it was flat and you could type better.
It's so much sexier than the bread bin.
That too. And he was still using Visarite 64 to write his letter and all this correspondence. So he preferred that. And so the first one he got couldn't run programs. As soon as he loaded in a program and ran, the computer crashed. And so he got another one. And the second one he got had a problem with the expansion port. The expansion port was 5 millimeters too bold. So it was too wide.
Oh, too wide.
Too wide, yeah. So he said, okay, screw it. I'm not going to return the Commodore 64 a second time. He just used tools and removed the overdue PCB.
Okay.
So that was really, really bad quality. So they used parts that were broken to make new Commodore 64s.
Well, that sounds like a bad plan.
Yeah. Fortunately, my grandfather was attacked with, so he decided, okay, screw it. I repair the Commodore 64 myself. All right. So sorry for this little interruption. But anyway, I wanted to correct the history here a bit. Okay, so you got your own Commodore 64 in '94. What happened then?
Yeah, so I was 10 years old, and then I also was interested in writing my own programs. And it started with text adventures and stuff like that, of course, and adventure games in general, because I thought it's easier to write adventure games because they are not so fast-paced and they can be written in BASIC. So basically, I didn't know how to make an action game or something like that. But the bad thing about the adventures was I couldn't play them by myself because I always knew the solution. And there was one friend of mine, he suggested I should wait until I forget the solution and then play it. Yeah, maybe today I could do that.
Okay. Well, as a kid, how long it takes till you forget a solution, that could take 10 years or longer or whatever.
That's true, yeah. So most of my games back then in BASIC, they were just adventure games. And yeah, I kept programming until I think in the end of '96, we moved over to the PC, and then I discontinued my C64 programming. But it still was always in some way interesting for me, the machine. So still I was using emulators very early. I think it was in 1998 that I got my first emulators because it was exciting for me to play C64 games on the PC and so on. And so basically the C64 never really faded away, but I regained more interest in, I think it was 2005 or 2006 when I read about the game Joe Gun, which was basically at that time for me a sensation because it was a new game for the C64 and it wasn't so common as today, where you get new games basically every week or so. But back then it was really a sensation. So I really liked the game and I thought, maybe I could do that by myself somehow. And I was interested in learning assembly language on the C64 at that time.
Which was probably a piece of cake for you, right?
No, not really. I thought it would be a piece of cake at that time. I thought it can't be so complicated and so on. But then when I made my first project, I quickly realized that it's a bit harder than I expected it to be. But at some point you get into it and then everything works much nicer. But actually, to be honest, I'm not the super assembly, super demo coder or something like that. So that's why I make those simple games. Yeah.
Wow, it's good enough to.
Simple is relative though, because I mean, again, you're using there's one of them. The Frogs game is a 4-player game that has to use special hardware to do it, and that's not your typical run of the mill. And
that's
even just doing games in general. I was a demo coder and I did some utility stuff. But actually coding a game was always like far more difficult to me because there's so many variables you need to take into consideration and you have to think about, the user interaction with it. Whereas with a demo, this is what you're looking at and you don't do anything with it.
I still want a new test drive for the Commodore 64.
Don't ask me.
I say it every time we talk to a game coder. I always say, make a new game, a test drive game for the Commodore 64. I'm missing that. I'm missing this inside car view and all that stuff. That was awesome.
Okay.
It was awesome up until I got a car.
I still don't have a car. So
well,
it's still
there
awesome for
you go.
Well, I never really liked Test Drive. It was too slow for me. I don't know.
He's got a super CPU though.
Yeah, yes. and on the American machines, it's running 23% faster, and it's actually making fun.
I don't know. I still think it's pretty slow and unfun on my machine.
Well, try it 23% slower on Paul machines, and you will totally change your mind.
That would be painful. That's.
So we got stuck in traffic here.
Yeah, right. That's what they should make a game. They should make a game like that's just like you're stuck in traffic. Like the Desert Bus game where it's like you actually just have to drive a bus for 12 hours or something. They should do that where you like got to commute to work for 3 hours every morning.
Yeah, that reminds me of the Great American Cross Country Racing.
Yeah,
where you have to push your car along the street if you have no fuel anymore.
Oh yeah, I remember that bit.
Yeah, my brother was always playing that game, but I'm not so much into driving games. So I have to disappoint you with your wish.
They drive you crazy.
Driving games on the C64 were never like because using a joystick and or keyboard and stuff, and it's like that's not. When you're a kid, maybe all right, that's cool. But now it's like I know how a car works, so I have
a steering wheel.
Yeah, so do I. I had a steering wheel too, but it was like you turn it to the left, and it's like full on left because it's a digital joystick or thing. So it's like left is like all the way. So if you were driving like this in real life, you'd be like boom to the left, boom to the right. There's no subtlety to it, It's you can't just like turn slightly to the left. No. It's like balls out to the left every time you want to do it.
Okay, so now we know why Christian is not doing such kind of games.
Yeah.
Unless you want to come up with an analog joystick device, and then we can go in there and then make it subtle.
There was actually one for Flight 2, but it never was sold in big quantities.
Flight Simulator 2?
Yeah.
Oh, see, that would have been cool because that game was in as much as it was realistic as far as the physics and everything go. Again, you touch the stick and you're like off to the side. And that's not.
And there was one for Refs, which is a Formula 3 simulation.
Okay.
And the first version, so not the Gold Edition, was only playable on analog joystick or keyboard.
Okay.
And then they made Shadowfire, which also supports all kinds of interfaces, and that was coded before the interface existed.
Oh. See, they need to make like an adapter so that you can plug in your analog joystick. Because I've got, they make them where you can plug in a USB stick or something like that, but they don't. None of them use the analog.
Yeah, but wasn't there a driving wheel adapter recently?
Maybe.
I think there is one, but I don't know the name. But I think there
driving wheel adapter. You should send us the link so we can.
He's not sure what it is.
Like Inception or something, or is the Inception the 8-player adapter?
AJ will dig it up. He is master at digging up stuff.
There is one, but I think there's only one game or so.
That's good enough.
I know the game. I think the game is speeding on the A81.
So we will torture you long enough so you make the second game for this steering wheel. It's good.
I'm looking at it right now. It came out in 2013. It looks like it is the Inception. It's an 8-joystick adapter. Supports 8 joysticks for multiplayer. Supports 8 PS2 PC mice. C64 mouse simulation. Easy plug to one joy port. Automatic detection. External math coprocessor.
But what kind of game was that?
I'm looking at the Inception thing, but I don't know what the game is.
Okay. Then I mixed that up. So the game that you're looking for is speeding on the A81.
Oh yes, that is. I got a copy from Polyplay.
Yeah, they released it a few years ago.
Yeah,
and I think they support the analog steering wheel or something like that.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking at Polyplay right now at the collector's edition, speeding on the A81. It's in German, so I have no idea what I'm reading.
But Polyplay also has an English version of the homepage.
Yeah, Space Repair Settings, das Spiel merkt sich ich lieben.
Just switch to English.
You know what I love about the German language? Is that, like, you invent new words just by, like, taking different words and sticking them together.
Well, don't you do that too? I remember when I was reading Harry Potter, the Sorcerer's Stone, you came up with the phrase "good for nothing husband."
Yeah,
it's in the book.
But that's a phrase, though. That's a phrase. Like
they wrote it like a dash word.
Right. But that's still multiple words. It's just meant to be in one thing. Whereas there's some words in here. I'm on the English version. It's still in German. Lieblingseinstellungen.
Well, then try it on a browser. There it works.
Yeah.
For the PC, not for the mobile.
This interview is going great.
Wonderful. Not so much. Well, I mean, we talk about games. Why not? So anyway, we still didn't get to the point. Why Christian?
Yeah, we're still on that first question still.
Yeah, well, why you got into game development and how?
In game development in general, or just for the C64?
Yeah, in general.
Okay, so yeah, basically I was always interested in that, and I started on the C64 in BASIC. Actually, I was obsessed with creating 3D first-person shooters on the C64, which I never really managed to do, but I started 4 times or so. There's actually video of one of my efforts on YouTube, but it's really basic, and it is done in BASIC, actually. So basically, at that time, I knew the games Doom and Wolfenstein from my friends, and I wanted to make something like that on the C64, but until this day, I haven't managed to do that, so this will be my eternal quest, maybe. But so that was how I started on the C64. Later on the PC, I continued to write in BASIC mostly, and so on, and that's how it emerged. But really, I picked the topic up a few years back ago. To go back to the C64 because I was getting more into retro gaming again with my friends, and they had the multi-joy interface for the Atari XL, and they were playing the 8-player games like Chervi and Helicops and stuff like that. and I was amazed by the simpleness of those games and the party factor. So for some reason I thought, why not make something like that for the C64? Because I also had the 4-player adapter. A friend of mine gave it to me once, and I never really used it. We played once with it for a match of Bomberland or
Bombmania, you mean?
I think it was Bombmania.
Bombmania from Protovision, yeah. Because that is also where the adapter came from. It's the Protovision 4-player adapter, yeah.
Yeah, so I was at one of my friends' retro meetings, and they played we played those 8-player Atari games again, and I had my C64 with me and the 4-player adapter, and I thought it's kind of sad that there are not so many cool 4-player games for the C64, because I have the adapter, I never use it, and then I had the idea to create a new game for this machine and this adapter. And the game that emerged then was Shotgun. I think I hope you both played it maybe once in your life, and it was released in 2016. So the idea is quite simple, because I wanted to make it similar to those Atari games, where you have not much overhead, not much introduction and so on, simply a quick match of playing against each other. And that was basically how it started then, and that game was becoming quite popular as a quick party game, and that was the reason why I continued with my next game, Frogs.
Awesome. Yeah, it's true.
Don't we have a review of Shotgun? I believe that Andrew did a review of it on the...
Of course we have a review of Shotgun. Yeah. So, Andrew Fisher, our dear Andrew Fisher, picked it up and made a review of it.
Unboxing and review, yeah.
Yeah. And I think it is due to this that I actually got in touch with Christian. And it's true. The first time I heard from him was about this shooter game. People told me like, you have to play this game, it's great. And it was played at HomeCon and other events I went to, and they was like, hey, look, this is this guy who made this game. I was like, okay, interesting. So was pretty simple. And then I was ordering more games from Christian directly, and this is how I got in touch with Chris over Facebook. I think, I'm not sure if I remember, but I think I was the person who got the last copy of the Frog Special Edition, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. It was, I think it was even reserved for someone else, but he didn't want to buy it anyway, or something like that happened. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
So that was that was you, the lucky buyer of the last limited edition of Frogs. Yeah.
Not to say lucky bastard or something.
Yeah, I meant that, but I didn't say that.
Beep.
Yeah, that's not a beep. We can say that.
Yeah, right. I'm still waiting for that magazine you wanted to send me. I hope that's happening too.
You mean the Christmas magazine?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a different story. Should I talk about it?
Oh yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay.
Let's talk about your Christmas magazine.
Okay, that sounds quite interesting if someone doesn't know what it's about. But yeah, it's a basic programming Christmas magazine. And it was a quick idea that I had in before last Christmas. Yeah, so it's not a reference to the song. So last Christmas, I had the nice idea to because many people actually feel some kind of connection between Christmas and C64, as we have also heard in AJ's story.
Yeah, so, I also got mine on Christmas, so I can totally relate.
Yeah, but still many people, I have heard that many people, when Christmas comes, they also think about their C64, and maybe they pull it out again, and sometimes also teach their kids a few basic stuff and so on. And so my idea was, why not make a small basic magazine that has it's like a listing magazine back from the day. So there are some basic listings which all have some kind of Christmas reference, and they are all made by different authors. So not all the programs are made by me. So it was a collaboration in the Forum 64. And I wasn't expecting so many, but I think in the end it was something like 21 or 26 or something like that. So it was, or 20. I think it was 20 programs, and some were pretty long and some were pretty short. But almost every program had at least some reference to Christmas, and the idea was to print that into such a listing magazine just for fun and to make it, basically the idea was that people buy the magazine and then at home at Christmas they sit down, put up their C64s and really type in the programs and have fun with that. So it was really intended to, the program shouldn't be shared as a D64 file or something. It was really intended to be typed in. And the resonance was quite well from that project, and also, as I said, there were many programs coming in, and it was also a bit difficult to get everything working before Christmas so that people really got the magazine in time. But in the end, it worked out, and it was really a fun project. We printed around 100 pieces, and so there were really people telling nice stories how their kids typed in the games and were really happy with that. So one guy, he talked about his 8-year-old daughter or something like that. She was really having fun with it, and she was also she didn't want to turn the program off and so on. So she kept it running and so on, and she was deciding what to type in next and so on. So it was really, really a fun project after all, and I'm glad that everything happened like it did. And I promised to make a reprint of it because I wasn't very satisfied with the paper, and also there were some issues. So there were some print errors in the listings and with the checksums and everything like that. So we decided to reprint it. But actually, when Christmas was over, I was a bit, I don't know, not so much in a Christmas mood. And I had lots of other things to do, and now I decided to wait until next Christmas, because next Christmas we will make volume 2 with new programs, and my plan is to reprint the old issue also, so that next Christmas it's a better time, because at the moment the summer is coming, and I think people are not so interested now into having this comfy Christmas magazine. So I think it's better to wait until Christmas again.
As long as I can get both copies, then the first and the second volume next Christmas, I'm totally fine with that.
Of course, as I said, the reprint will happen, and I will not make it limited or something like that. So there will be a reprint, and maybe if everything works out, maybe we can have a new one each year. So that would be really nice.
And now, thanks to this announcements, you got a lot more customers.
Yeah, that's also cool. But I have to say the whole thing is in German language. So, but I think it's still interesting to type in the programs.
Sure. Maybe I'll dust off my basic programming skills and submit something for it. Although you'll need to translate it, because I can't code in German.
I guess the only words most Americans know are like Papiere bitte and Gutentag.
What was the first one?
Papiere bitte, which means papers, please.
Oh,
or Ausweis.
That I don't know.
That was all digital samples in Karl von Wolfenstein.
Oh, yeah. No, I remember from Wolfenstein was like, Gutentag, is them saying
exactly.
Have nightmares about that.
But that was only Wolfenstein 3D.
Yes.
That only said Gutentag.
Yeah.
But the original Wolfenstein had a lot more language shaders.
Oh.
You mean the Commodore and the Atari version?
Exactly, from Mu Software, which were the base for Commodore Wolfenstein 3D.
Never
from
played it.
Software. It's actually quite interesting, but I have to say I didn't enjoy playing it much, but I think it's still a really interesting and important game because it was really Wolfenstein 3D was really a remake of that. So they also said that in interviews and so on. It was not a coincidence or something like that.
I know. We will link to this interview with John Romero that I did last December.
Yeah.
So people can hear it where he says it to me it was a successor.
So what was that first word again? Say it again slowly.
Papiere bitte, papers please.
Okay.
Or there's another different way would be say Ausweis bitte, which also means papers please.
Okay.
Though they used a little bit of variations, so it wouldn't sound so dull, repeating all the same things.
Yeah.
Just like Space Taxi.
Yeah.
Where you have pad 1 please, pad 1 please,
right,
pad
right.
1 please, or something, It's all the same voice but different stuff.
No, I know Gutentag, and I know that Hosen are pants.
Yeah,
pretty much the rest, everything else is just it's like with French. As long as you finish your sentence with like ha ha, then you're speaking French. In German, as long as you do it while you're yelling, then you're in German.
Yeah. Which is not true, of course.
I know that, but I'm just
stereotypes.
Yes.
Just like no Chinese can pronounce TH and R,
Yeah. And as long as you're like, waving a flag and shooting guns while you talk, then you're an American.
Well, let's not get political here.
Well, that's totally true, though. I mean, nothing I like more than shooting guns while I talk.
And wave flags.
Exactly.
Which is how Christian got the idea of shotgun, right?
Yeah.
That's
wanted to make a very American game.
That's pretty much a trip to the store here.
Yeah, actually, I don't know if you noticed that, but in Shotgun there are some I don't know how to call it, like plants in their plant tops or whatever you call it. So I don't know exactly how I got this idea, because normally you're just running around in a brick wall maze, but those plants actually make it like it could be a office building or something like that. So I think that's a bit weird, but I actually don't remember how exactly I got the idea for that. But everyone asks what they are for, and they have no real use, so it's just for decoration. But it's pretty. I think it's pretty funny.
It's a lot like my work where I actually work. They have a love affair with plastic plants. At every building that you go into, there's just these. It's almost like that. Every corner, there's a plastic tree sitting there collecting dust and taking up space.
So I hope that video games don't affect you too much.
I have the feeling I've heard this before. Wasn't there this famous frame from this famous sentence from A-Team where Hannibal says, "I like when a plan puts together"?
That's every episode he says, "I like when a plan comes together."
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. No, not planned. Planned. Okay. And there's a difference here. Oh my God! What a cheesy joke!
Wow, that's pushing it.
Yeah, he didn't say when a plant puts together.
Yeah,
he said when a plant puts together.
He's got like a twig sticking out of his mouth instead of a guitar. Or a guitar? What the hell am I talking? A cigar. Yeah, he smokes a cigar. He doesn't have a guitar. Wow, we've really derailed. Good Lord.
Yeah.
Yes, but yeah.
Never had so much fun during an interview as today.
Do you know the game on the C64, Rootin Tooters?
I've never heard of that.
I have heard it, yes.
I think there's also so in my imagination, I imagine that a music teacher made this game. Yeah, for some reason, because it has classical music and it's a little bit like Pac-Man, but you're a tuba. Is it called tuba in English too? Okay, you're a tuba walking around a maze made out of note lines, So, or I don't know how you call it. So where the written notes, like sheet music, and the maze is made out of those, and you are walking about on those lines, and they are musical instruments who are also a little bit like living beings. So there are violins that look a little bit like cats. So it's a mixture between real living creatures and musical instruments, and they are chasing you, and you have to blow off all the notes from the note lanes with your tuba. And it's a really, I don't know, it's a really charming game. You have to check it out on the C64. And I don't remember how I got to this idea now, but yeah.
That was totally written by
we're talking about cigars and guitars. Yeah. So that was yeah. So it's a mixture between musical instruments and animals. So you have to check it out.
That was totally written by like a third grade music teacher.
You also have to listen to the music of the game. It's really funny. It's really charming. Check it out.
Well, I have to say, one thing that I really loved about the 80s was that people actually invented new genres just for the fun of it. I mean, for example, flight simulation on home computers, Flight Simulator, Flight 2, was invented by a pilot who just learned assembly language because he was having a course in a university about aerodynamics and physics while flying, and students totally were fascinated by that. And he was like, wow, okay, now we have home computers, so why not using that and invent something like Flight Simulator.
And it was it worked really well because and I've told you this before that they used that at the flight school that I went to, but also my very first tryout flight. He was showing me everything in the plane, the instructor, and I was like, yeah, and I was kind of cutting him off and saying, and he's like, oh, have you done this before? I'm like, no, I've got Flight Simulator too. He's like, on the Commodore 64. He's like, oh, you're good, Dan. He's like, just take off. Yeah, because normally they take off, and then when you're up, they're like, okay, now you can steer the plane a little bit, and and get a feel for it and whatnot, and decide if you want to do this. But once I told him that, he's like, you're good. He just sat back and took a nap because it was that realistic. What are we talking about? Why are we here?
Because we are talking about computer games with Christian Gleinser.
Yes, that's true. We should be talking about Christian Gleinser's computer games.
Aren't we? I mean, we talked about Shooter, Frogs. Actually, the latest game was actually Shadow Switcher, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk a bit about that. How did you get this idea? Because I found it a rather interesting new concept for a game, which is something that is a novelty nowadays.
Yeah, so the idea was... Actually, really, the idea came that I had some strange music in my mind that sounded a little bit like a national anthem from Summer Games or something like that, but it was my own melody. And I suddenly, you also maybe remember the game, the music from Crystal Castles in the beginning, like, and it's a little bit. So it's annoying and over the top and really bad sounding. And for some reason, I had such a melody in my mind, and I tracked it down with Goat Tracker, and I thought, okay, I have to program a game with that music. And my idea was to make a very, very classic game. So I thought everyone's trying to push the limits of the C64. Everyone's trying to make better graphics and cool stuff. And I thought, why not make a game that is really old school and really more like the really old crazy games where everything is going whoop and teet and stuff like that, and like a thing on a spring and stuff like that. So the really crazy stuff, that was my desire. And then I thought about ideas, and in the end, the game that really came out was not that crazy, actually. So it turned a little bit into a different direction, and also the music that I used in the background is much less annoying than what I had in mind in the beginning. But I used that still for the intro. So if you start the game, there's a logo coming up from Dr. Wuro Industries, and it's also pretty old school. So there are small yellow stars surrounding it. So like a typical 1983 game. So something really simple. And so the music is still in there in the beginning. And the idea was to make a really, really old school game like, like Jumpman Junior and stuff like that. So really old school, not trying to push boundaries. But of course, I still wanted to make it very playable, so I invested a bit of work into the control of the character, because many of those old games have the problem that the character movements are sometimes very picky, and you have to be exactly in front of the ladder that you want to climb up and stuff like that, or the jumping it looks like a triangle and so on. So I really wanted to make that at least pretty good, but the whole style of the game should be very, very old school. And that's how the game basically emerged from that basic idea.
And it is, whilst it's retro kind of looking, like Joerg mentioned, there is an interesting catch to it. And that is that in the game, you can switch with wherever your shadow is. So you can, if you get in trouble, you can pop over to where your shadow is, and then where your shadow now is, and all this stuff. So how did you come up with that?
Yeah, that was interesting, because I also thought the game should at least have some original element to it. So I don't want to make just a clone of Lode Runner or something like that. And I thought there has to be some feature that you have to use. And I played a game on the Ouya console. I don't know if you know that console.
What?
I do.
What is
it's an Android console that came out in 2013, but it was not so successful as it seemed initially. But there was one game where you can set your spawn point at any given time, and I thought about doing something like this, and then I thought, okay, you can place your you can place a teleport point or something like that. But then I thought it's too complicated to have this kind of setting a point, then later teleporting back to it and so on. And then the idea came that it would be much nicer to play if you would immediately switch between two characters, basically, and that basically the shadow and the real character. So that was how I came up with the idea, and I was quite happy with that, because I think it's really, I don't know any other game that has the same feature. Later I learned about a game called Alter Ego, which has a, let's say, similar idea, but it's still not really the same idea. But I'm quite happy that I didn't copy a game completely or something like that. But still, of course, there are lots of people comparing it to Lode Runner and Jumpman and so on. But that's fine for me, because it was part of the idea to make a very, very classic platform game.
For me, it felt a bit like playing Castles of Dr. Creep again.
Okay, so the interesting thing about that is I actually had the game when I was a kid, but I didn't understand it really, because I think I only played the tutorial and not the real game. And when the tutorial was over, I thought, okay, so that was everything, yeah, and I didn't really get the point of the game. But later I learned that the tutorial was not everything, and there is actually a real game behind it. But I still have to play it, yeah. So I still really never really got into it. But I will check it out maybe on the next retro event or something like that.
Wow, if games were so easy, huh? Just playing the tutorial, I beat it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really strange. I didn't understand what it was about. I thought, is it really a game, or is it more like a concept or whatever? I was really not sure back at that time, but I was, I don't know, I was maybe 12 or something like that. And I somehow I didn't find the start the real game option in the menu, or whatever I did wrong. I don't know. Maybe also the disc was faulty. I don't know.
So what's coming up next? What is your plan? What's your next games plan?
Yeah, that's a bit difficult at the moment, because in between all the other games, I made a PC game, which was originally just intended for one special event. And then it grew a bit from that, and I wanted to release it as a PC download game, but I still haven't done it to this day. At the moment, I'm trying to focus on that one just to get it out of the pipeline.
Wasn't that Heimatspiele or something?
Yeah, it's called Heimat Games, which is Heimat is a German word, basically meaning something like home, but not home in sense of your house, but more of the village and countryside where you are from. Uh-huh. So it is a very it's a very cheesy village style game where people walk around with lederhosen and beer and so on, and there are cows and tractors and so on. And it is also a 4-player game. It's a little bit like a small summer games type game, but with funny village stuff, countryside ideas. But yeah, I want to get that out from the pipeline, of course, because I don't want to start another game until it's finished. It is finished, but I still have to polish it up to make a real possible release out of it. And then I think I want to go back to the C64, of course. I also thought about porting it to the C64, but I think it's not really possible to really port it because it has too many sprites and so on. So
who said the same thing about Super Mario Bros?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I think I don't want to make any compromises. That's my problem. So if I cannot really make the thing happen, or I have to make some compromises with some sprites or the looks of some sprites that I'm already used to, it's difficult for me to say, okay, I will do it half-assed or something like that. So that's the reason why I don't want to do it. Of course, there should be nothing bad about the Super Mario game. I think it's quite cool, but on the other hand, there are some slowdowns and some sprites that are popping up later in the frame and not from the side. And I personally wouldn't like to have such a port. So that's just my personal feeling here about my own game. So I think I will probably only port it once I find a real solution to do it. So that's what I'm currently working on. But for the C64, I have a few ideas, but I'm not really sure which one I should really implement. And maybe I will have another idea until the time comes.
Or use the RAM expansion. As we learned from Sam's Journey, you can use RAM expansion to get around some limitations. That was totally awesome to me.
Yeah, that's true, but I think in my case the RAM is not the problem. It's more the amount of sprites and the resolution of the sprites.
Actually, when we did an interview with Chester Colson, he said we didn't use the RAM per se, but routines, the RAM expansion.
The fast DMA.
Yeah, exactly, the fast DMA.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, exact perfect point for the next thing. You actually released your own cartridge with built-in joystick ports. How did that happen?
Yeah, that was a coincidence, because there was a guy from Holland and he was asking me. He's a big fan of cartridges, and I didn't think about that at the moment. And he asked me if he can do a Frogs cartridge, but I was not interested in that because I felt that, I don't know, Frogs was just a small little party game, and I didn't really want to make a cartridge just with Frogs. I wanted to make more 4-player games on one cartridge. And of course, there was also Shotgun, so it was a possible idea to include both games on one cartridge. And then the thing was, at that time, the 4-player adapters were sold out everywhere. And the guy from Holland, he said he wants to build some by himself. And I said, yeah, that would be really a cool idea. And then he had another idea the next day to include the 4-player adapter into the cartridge itself. And that was a really cool idea. So we agreed on producing that, and that was also really a popular release then, because it's a nice package and it's a bit unique, and it brings the necessary ports right with the cartridge. That's pretty a cool idea. So greetings to him. He's called Sam55. in the internet. So he's a fan of cartridges, and I'm really glad that this thing happened.
Yeah, interesting story here. That when I got this cartridge, I also got the ultimate Swinzit, and actually I found a bug in the ultimate Swinzit. Thanks to this cartridge, there was some interference between the cartridge logic and the ultimate Swinzit. So actually they fixed the problem. So thanks to the cartridge, I figured out there was a problem with the firmware on this device. So
that's also
totally
cool.
Awesome thing. So this cartridge helped the product to improve and get rid of some bugs in it, which is actually a nice coincidence.
That's really cool, yeah.
Because the problem with cartridge games nowadays on the Commodore 64 is that they are all relying on PLA stuff. And since so many Commodore 64 don't have original PLAs anymore, but third-party PLAs, some cartridges don't work on some PLA clones.
Replacements.
Yeah, replacements. Okay. Yeah. And I didn't know that there would be similar issues with SID replacements. There are tons of SID replacements as well as PLA replacements. So looks like those new cartridges are not really tested for compatibility with those clones, or the other way around. I don't know. I guess the hardware manufacturers only test stuff with the stock C64 things, but not with the third party.
Well, it's tough to test for every single third party SID or something that's being put out, because there's so many different ones and they're coming out all the time. That when the hardware was designed, they might not that extra Swin SID may not have even been a thing yet.
Yeah, or sometimes it's also hard to get them. So sometimes they are only short runs of the Swin SID and so on. And I can understand that it's hard to test against everything. Yeah, of course. But yeah, that's interesting.
Speaking of the SID, so aside from just coding the games, you also have done music for them and graphics for them as well.
Yeah.
So what's your favorite aspect of that? Like what is there something you prefer? Do you prefer doing music to graphics or to coding or something? Or is coding, because for me, I was a graphics guy and I got tired of waiting for my stuff to get used, so I learned to code so that I didn't have to wait for other people to use my graphics. But for me, coding was just a means to an end to get my stuff done.
I think I like all the aspects of the game programming stuff. So graphics, obviously, and music. I also made music in my free time back then, or not on the C64, but with real synthesizers and so on. So it's all stuff that I'm interested in. And also the programming part of it was very exciting for me at some time. But I have to say, since I'm also working in the software development, I have to say that maybe programming is even the least favorite part of mine, because at some point you just want to get the game ready and you don't care so much about the implementation details. Of course, some other people are totally different and they love to code and so on. I still enjoy it also, but sometimes I would be glad if I could get the idea out quicker. So I'm also more into designing the game, having the idea for the game, making the graphics, the music. So it's the overall package in the end. And I think that's also one of the nicest things about game programming, that there are so many different things that are coming together to make the whole thing. So it's not just making graphics or just making music. It's really, you have to do all the aspects of the game, and I really enjoy that overall process. And I think that's really cool that this one hobby basically brings together all the other hobbies. So that's really cool about game programming.
So we could say you are the Richard Bayliss of Germany.
I don't know.
You are just not releasing games so often as he does.
That's maybe true. Yeah, I don't know.
It's interesting. There seems to be a lot of people who do multiple things. I mean, look at our own Andrew Fisher, who's a composer and a coder, or as we said, Richard Bayless, who's also part of Scene World, doing everything. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting because when I did interviews, with pioneers like Chris Craig or who was the coder of Ghostbusters again? I forgot.
David Crane,
yeah. They all told me, back then when we had to code in the early 80s, we only were a team of one person for one game. And times were so great when suddenly we were working in teams. And nowadays we are talking to Richard Bayless, or as we talk now to Christian, and now there is this one game made by one person again. It's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's really cool that it's still possible to make a game as one person and still have people enjoy it. So that's really what I also think it's cool. And I have to say, I think there are different types of persons, because let's say a programmer who can absolutely only program and not do any graphics and music, he's pretty glad if he has a good team. Mm-hmm. So that's really cool. But for my part, it's sometimes it's hard sometimes to work with other people, because I have a vision in my head, and sometimes if someone else is doing the graphics and they look different from what I had intended, I have a hard time accepting that, and I want to do everything my way. So maybe I also thought about that a lot, and I thought maybe I'm more the person who makes everything on his own, just because it's a bit difficult maybe for me to work with other people and share the vision and not having full control over everything. So I think that also depends a little bit on the person, but it can be also fun to work in teams. But one thing that I really have to say is really cool about working on yourself all on your own is that you don't have to wait basically until other people have their stuff together, because sometimes it can be really hard if the initial enthusiasm is very high, and then after a few weeks it's hard to communicate about the progress and have you done something new, and no, I'm still working on it. I even have that problem with myself also sometimes, because sometimes you're lazy and not in the mood for doing that, but then I'm responsible for it on my own, and I'm not relying too much on other people getting their stuff together. So it all has its ups and downs, of course. So I think it depends on the person.
But you're not only your own coder, own graphic artist, and own composer. You're also your own publisher and publish the games commercially.
Yeah, that's also true. But I'm also at the moment in the process of working with other possible publishers and so on, because I really have to say it was interesting to do it, and I wanted to do it. But at some point, it gets also a bit. It's also a lot of work if you have to build everything yourself and sell it and package it and so on, and it also takes away time from developing new games. So I have a little bit discovered that I should focus more on producing the game and maybe try to find someone else who can help me with selling and publishing and so on. So, but it's still an interesting thing that I always wanted to do. So that was the reason why I did it for Shotgun, and then also for my next releases, of course. But this is the thing probably in the future that I would like to collaborate with other people.
Well, the good thing is we are in good times. There are so many publishers for Commodore 64 games. Archicity, Psychnosis, Protovision, Polyplay. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. And then it's also a trend in the last 10, 20 years that small publishers unite into one, or coders start publishing over others. just to see, for example, Out of Order games suddenly being published by Protovision. And Bomb Mania was originally published by Classical Games, but then they decided to not publish it themselves again, but doing it under the wings of Protovision. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's good because, of course, all the publishers, they are not so much in having competition. I think they are more like we're all in this together, and I think it's cool that they collaborate. And as I said, it's also a lot of work, and for in some cases it might make more sense to really just be a publisher or just be a developer than trying to have both, especially as one person. So it's really cool that there are so many people interested in doing these kind of things today.
My Bomb Mania and Ice Guys version is still the one from Classical Games, so they are kind of rare now. Not having a Protovision logo in front of it. Wow. So what is your dream? Do you want to make a publishing hit like Sam's Journey that published over thousands of copies next? Or what's your next plan? Do you want to, I don't know, be spread more, or are you more for this small party games?
It's difficult to answer, actually. Yeah, I don't know. Of course, it's always nice if the games are played by almost everyone and so on. So, of course, that's the ultimate goal, probably. It's not my ambition to try to be better than Sam's Journey or something like that. But yeah, of course, I also like to try different things. So in the beginning, I thought I will continue making 4-player games, but at some point I thought, I want to do something different, and that's why Shadow Switcher came out, and people were happy with the game because also they were in the beginning they were a little bit nagging that about the fact that my games cannot be played as a single player experience. So I thought, why not make a single player game this time? Actually, there's a 2-player mode in Shadow Switcher, which is quite interesting. But yeah, so that was also some kind of making a different thing this time. But I think I will probably stick more to the little bit simpler games, or not trying to make epic games. Not a pun to the publisher now. So I think those large ambitious projects, they tend to take forever, especially as one person, and you're the only one who's kicking yourself in the ass to do something. So that can be quite, problematic.
Well, I can be at your service. I will send you a message each week.
Yeah, he will. Don't test him.
Okay.
Well, a little suggestion. Why don't you make instead of a 4-player game, you make a 40-player game? You know, network games is a field that isn't really something that people went deep into.
A C64 MMORPG.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, that's a good question, but I think I also have a good answer, because network games are really problematic. I have thought about the principle of network gaming, and there are really some problems that cannot be really solved. You can only hide them a little bit, and the more 2D the game is, and the more exact and pixel perfect the game is, the less easy it is to hide those network lag problems and so on. So, and as I said before, I don't want to do stuff that cannot be done. So that's why I will probably not look too much into that kind of topic. But yeah, so I actually prefer to stick a little bit more to the established stuff. Of course, that doesn't mean that I'm just cloning game concepts. I really try to come up with something on my own, but I'm not trying to do too ambitious stuff and stuff that is too experimental, because in the end, I want to make a game that people enjoy, and that's why sometimes the easy stuff or the simple stuff is a little bit more effective in the end, in my opinion.
I just remember that once, Richard Bayless was known, or is still known, for his little games and so on, for the same reasons you have mentioned. He wants to get things done. And then in 2008, he came up with his Sub Hunter conversion from the VIC-20 to the C64. And that was a brilliant game, a huge game with intro, outro, animation, colorful graphics, all that stuff, and large gameplay. So I still think it is possible. Of course, I will still continue buying your games. But of course, I also would support you if you decide, okay, my next game takes 3 years because it will be a bigger game.
Yeah, it's difficult to say because you never know what kind of ideas you have in 1 or 2 years. So I might change everything, of course. But in general, I also have a few ideas for a little bit larger games. But for me, as I said, I don't want to make compromises, especially on the gameplay side. And some of the larger concepts also take some things into account that are not really possible on the C64. Like you have only one fire button, and if you have more actions on the player character, you have to find compromises how to control it. And if it makes the game not as playable as it would be without that function, I'm not really a fan of still putting it in just because there is no other way of doing that. So for me, really, the game has to be it has to be really good playable. So that's the reason why I'm hesitating a little bit when it comes to more ambitious ideas. But I'm still thinking sometimes about those ideas, and as soon as if I have a really good concept, I will think about starting to implement the game. But in general, I hope that I will never work on a game for 3 years or so, because it can be really, I don't know. I think it's a bit too long for me. I think 1 year is the absolute maximum. But I don't know how it will turn out, so everything can change, of course. So don't take my words too seriously.
Oh, another idea. A new light gun game would be great. There are not many good light gun games.
Yeah.
Not many good light guns either.
Oh, for the Commodore 64?
Yeah.
There's this Magnum light gun, I have it. It's great.
Yeah,
it's wonderful.
you've got
very
it.
accurate.
You're the only one that does.
No, Andrew Fisher got it too.
Well, actually, I only played the first time I really played a light gun game. I think it was not so long ago, so I never really had the chance to play it until recently, and I was a bit disappointed because I had the feeling that I always hit the screen because it was too. It was on the NES, and I think it was not so exact, or I was too far away from the TV or whatever. So it was
too far away.
Yeah, so it's more like a gimmick and not really. It's not really my kind of thing then, because as I said, I want to make something with good gameplay, and if it's just using some gimmick because it's cool, it's not really my kind of stuff. So other people can do that, but I try to keep my typical arcade style kind of gameplay. If I ever happen to make a good Wolfenstein 3D clone on the C64, I will do that. But this will probably never happen because I would also have to do some compromises. And don't suggest now the super CPU version or so, because that's really. I really have to say I'm really not impressed by this kind of stuff. So it's just because
was a great thing.
Huh?
Metal Dust was a great thing.
Actually, I will say this now in public because I also talked about with Chester about that game. Actually, never played it, but I just saw it on YouTube, and I asked him what he thinks about the game because, in my opinion, when I looked at the game, it doesn't really look like it's it's so necessary, so dependent on the super CPU. So it looked to me like an almost ordinary C64 game, and as opposed to that, Sam's Journey is a normal stock C64 game, and it looks absolutely fantastic. And he said that I hope I'm allowed to share this information, but he said he just continued the Metal Dust game. It was started by someone else, and he said by himself he's not thinking that it's a super example for the super CPU. So it just happens that it uses the super CPU, but I think it's not really, how should I say that?
Demanding enough?
Yeah, probably. I don't know. So, and I'm also not a fan of this of the super CPU in general. I think it's a bit. It misses the point a little bit. I don't know. So, and the Wolfenstein clone, it was just, I don't know. It looks bad. No one would play that. I'm pretty sure no one would really play that on that thing. It's just to let it run for 1 second and show it to everyone. Yeah, the C64 can do it with the super CPU, and that's it. So I would prefer to make games that really people really want to play.
The super CPU to me always felt like it was really geared more towards like the Geos crowd, the people doing the kind of productivity stuff. But for gaming, it just seemed like, I never liked it for that, or for just general use. You know, it had its purpose, but it was for people that were like using this as their main machine. For someone just playing a game, they shouldn't need to have a super CPU.
I still use it regularly.
Yeah.
For gaming too. For example, Test Drive, now Super Mario. And whenever I have to crunch something, I'd rather crunch within seconds than minutes or hours.
Yeah, now Super Mario, that new Super Mario doesn't need. I played it on my 128, and the turbo on the 128 was perfect. It handled it like a champ.
Yeah, but I'm not building up my Commodore 128 just for one game.
Well, but you don't need to build it up. I mean, mine's stock.
I know. I just mean, I don't have a space for it. I just have my C64 as a main computer, so that's good enough for me.
Until you get the 128 RM, and then you can put it in your C64 case.
Yeah, but I don't know what happened to that. The homepage is down. I don't know what happened to that.
Oh,
yeah.
Crap.
Yeah. So anyway, where can people find your stuff, Christian?
Yeah, of course, on my website. It's called drwuro.com, so it's written drwuro.com, and you can find lots of nice things there, and all the games can be downloaded for free, so there's no need to buy it. Of course, you can do that, but I'm not forcing anyone.
We recommend everybody support game developers.
I got physical copies of all games, and I don't regret it.
Yes.
That's nice.
You're welcome. Thank you for doing all those awesome games.
Yeah, I hope I will continue a little while.
Of course.
We do too. We totally do too.
Yeah. For the next 30 years, we are safe, I hope. When I stop working, I can say, okay, now I have enough time to play new games from Dr. Wuro Industries. Yeah. Okay, so thanks for taking the time. We will let you know when we put this out. All right? Was a very, very fun interview. Thanks a lot.
Yes, thanks a lot, too.
I have learned a lot about game development today. Okay, so good night.
Okay, see you. Bye.
Bye-bye.